Welcome into Courtside Seats with Kroeger,
a Charlotte Hornets podcast.
Here he is, Chris Kroeger.
Here we go, episode 16 of Courtside Seats, and I'm going to do this because it proves I learned something last week, okay? So follow me here. I was in New York City at our NBA broadcast meetings, and Amy Brooks presented to the broadcast teams that were there at our league meetings. And so for those who don't know Amy Brooks, she's the new Chief Innovation Officer at the NBA. It's a new position. This is now, I think, her second year at the league. And she started her presentation. I'm being long-winded here, but follow me. She started her presentation saying that there was a study done, right? That if students at a school had to present something, some sort of topic, and at the end, everybody was quizzed on the retention rate of what they just took in. And the numbers were fascinating because they found that, and I'm going to mess up the numbers, which is kind of the point on this, but what they found was that when people led with a stat, that the retention rate was like 5 to 6 times less than when somebody led with a story. So if you told a story, people would gravitate to that, they would latch onto that, and they would be much likely to remember what information you just presented to them, right? So I'm going to tell you a story as we lead off for episode 16. There have been a lot of great, and I do mean a lot of great high school basketball players in the state of Pennsylvania throughout the years, okay? Wilt Chamberlain is one, Dick Grote, Joe Folks, Len Chappell, some guy named Kobe Bryant was pretty good too. But none of those guys, literally none of them, were a 2-time Mr. Basketball in the state of Pennsylvania, because the only guy that was is the guy that's with me right now, our good pal Matt Carroll. Matty, good to see you, my friend. Welcome into Courtside Seats.
Thank you, Kroegs, and you just made me feel good. You know, I don't like to
That's an elite group of guys,
that's
my
elite.
friend.
I know. The only thing that's hard to swallow is even though Kobe only got it once, and I got it twice, like you just mentioned, he did have a career that went double mine. A few championships, few MVPs, but you know what? That's okay.
No, that's okay. And here's the thing, too. It's like when somebody says Tim Tebow, oh, he's stunk in the NFL. I don't care. The guy was one of the greatest college football players I've ever seen. What's that matter, right?
Well said.
They're
well
different.
said.
It's apples and oranges. You were one of the greatest prep basketball players in the state of Pennsylvania, which has produced a lot of great prep basketball players. And you went on to have a pretty good college career too, my friend.
You know, hey, it worked out, and I look back on high school. High school was a big part of my basketball career, and maybe we'll get into that, but I will never forget that.
Yeah. Well, here's what's crazy too, right? So it's game week, and not that anybody's counting, but I think it's 5 months and 15 days. By the time this podcast airs, it'll be 5 months and 15 days since we last hit the court, and I know it's preseason, but it's basketball, and I think we've been ready for this, and so it's only fitting that, you know, we get our new radio crew together behind the mic for the first time. You and me, buddy. What do you say?
I am so excited and ready, and I remember when we talked about this a few months back, it felt like it was going to be a long time, and here we go. Like you said, the summer's flown by.
It's crazy.
And Labor Day hit, and now we're talking training camp is starting next Tuesday.
It's wild because, I remember you came into the office, I think it was like my first or second week on the job, because we're getting ready for the draft coverage.
The draft, that's right.
For our ticket holders. And we were going over everything, and you sat down and you sat next to me. You said, "How you feeling, man? Does it feel real? Like, what's going on right now? Like, you got to be feeling like you've won the lottery." And I still feel that way. Does that ever leave? Like, because you played in the league for a decade. Yeah. Does that pinch me feeling ever leave where? Because I know some days are tough, some are not easy. But when you show up, you're like, my office is an NBA arena. Does that ever leave you?
It's always there. I think it takes different times and moments to think about it. But, you know, we talked about this a few minutes ago. The NBA is elite. You know, it's a special group to be a part of. And the way basketball has grown globally, everybody knows it, you know, and it's hard to be a part of this. And like we talked about also, once you get in,
you're in.
You're in, baby. And it'd be fun to stay in for a long time.
Well, the cool part is, so you are doing radio once again with us. You're going to do some more games on the road this year, which is really exciting.
How about that? Are you ready for that?
I am ready for that. But the reason is, okay, we're burying the lead on all this because the real reason for this is I'm not only talking to our radio analyst on the Hornets Radio Network, Matt Carroll, and former NBA guard of 10 years in the league. I'm also talking to Matt Carroll, our new director of player programs, / you got a slash in your job title, so you're twice as important. assistant coach for player development for the Hornets. So congrats on the new role, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That is a mouthful. Like
does that
everything.
fit on one business card? How does that look?
It doesn't. I'm not a big business card kind of guy, so we'll leave it at that, which is okay. But it's a long title.
Yeah.
And but like I said, I'm not a big title guy, but I'm excited about it. For me, finished playing just over 6 years ago, worked as an ambassador, and then was fortunate to get an opportunity in broadcasting, which I've loved. And then a couple of new opportunities this offseason came up because of some change. And my kids are getting to an age where I feel like I have some more time and can offer more. And it's just been great timing, like a lot of things in life. And, for me to be the director of player programs, what that is, you're basically in charge of the development of the players personally and professionally off the court. And, being a former player, I kind of know what they're going through. Yeah. And it's a lot to kind of navigate through. And there's a lot of people in your life and sometimes not sure, which way or who to listen to. And I'm kind of that resource for the players that they can turn to and, have a feel for what they're going through. And more or less a mentor, a life coach. And just being well-connected, within the organization and the city of Charlotte, too. I've been here for a long time. And
just knowing who to connect those guys to, right? Because you're not always going to have the answer yourself, but you know where they can find the answer. So if a guy says, hey, I'm thinking about making this investment, you're sitting there as a sounding board for me. Hey, that's a pretty good idea. Why don't you talk to this person, and they can further give you better information, right? Or why don't you go down this path and, somebody's offering to go into a business relationship with me over this. I don't know. Maybe you should talk to this person about that, right? That's kind of your world now.
Absolutely. That's a great explanation. And, for me, when I was playing, your focus is playing, in the NBA, it's a small window and that door can close. So I want the players to maximize everything they can on the court because it's an incredible opportunity. And the second thing is, though, it's not going to last forever. And you don't want to kind of put that idea too much in their head, but at the same time, they have to know that, listen, it's never too early to prepare for what's next. And when you are a player, you have such a unique opportunity for everything. I mean, people want to get to know you, and people want to give you opportunities, and you have so many opportunities, and sometimes you don't even know it. And the other thing is, too, the NBA has so many resources. And like you said, who can you put the players in touch with to help them? And there's a lot of resources out there that when I was a player, you don't even realize it. Yeah. And if you are interested in things, the best time to get started is when you are a player. Because once you stop playing, you're not that player anymore. You're a former player. So it's a bigger group. But when you are playing, it's select.
Did that position exist? I think probably for some teams it did, but when you were playing across the board, because now it's mandated, I think all 30 teams have to have it, but was that the case when you were playing too?
We had a position, but it's really become so much more a priority of the NBA. Obviously they're hiring this position for the G League teams now, to help the guys that aren't in the NBA. So the player development off the court is becoming so much more important, and you can see why. Because that reason, as the business has grown in the NBA, these players are such a huge asset. The amount of money we're talking that the players are making, the NBA is making as a business. So you want to educate guys as much as you can, and I think that's why this position has really grown.
So it's funny because you're talking about player development, and it used to be that was the title for what that role is director of player development. And now we think of player development. It's changed drastically in the last few years, and we think of on the court. So you're talking off the court, but that's also the other part of your job title is assistant coach for player development. So you're also doing some stuff on the court. Yeah. So you're doing all this off the court, but guys had workouts earlier today. You were on the court working out with those guys. So that's kind of you've never really delved into the coaching world. This is kind of new for you, but it's also in your wheelhouse because you played the game and you played it for a long time in the league.
Yeah, I think that's a question that most former players get a lot is, are you going to get into coaching? Because it seems natural. Now, is it a different job than being a player? Absolutely. Obviously the office hours, the time, and you're using your voice more or less. So for me, I've always had an idea of, hey, that might be fun, and that might work well for me. It might fit me. But sometimes it depends on opportunity, and I was dabbling in some different things, and then obviously the coaching change here. And, when Coach James Borrego came in, JB said to me, listen, when I was in San Antonio, he had his start there and was, a video coordinator there, and I was a rookie playing in San Antonio. So we had a connection from way back, and I met with JB. And San Antonio, I think over the years have done such a great job with player development and the amount of help and resources and coaching that they have there. And you've heard him talk about what an emphasis that's going to be with this team. So I talked to him, and he kind of brought the idea to me about getting back on the court and doing some.
What was your reaction to that? Did you instantly start to like perk up and get excited, or were you kind of saying, you know what, I need to think about this for a little? What was your instant reaction?
Instant reaction was I was excited, and I was like, yeah, like it's been a while. I'd love to get back on the court, and this sounds great. And Kemba and Bismack and MKG. I mean, I played with some of these guys, so it hasn't been that long, but it's been long enough for me to realize I'm not a player anymore.
That's pretty cool.
And so it was great. Then I think the second part of it is you're like, wait, does this mean it's coaching? Am I ready for this? Was kind of my second thought. Then it was like, hey, I got to talk to the wife, talk to the family. Are they okay with this? Are we in a situation where I can take all this on? And then once I talked it over and once they were on board, I knew this was the right fit for me. So got a chance to then meet the staff, and really excited about this coaching staff. Young, great energy.
Super young, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of young blood on that coaching staff.
Incredible, I know. And but it's great. And I think the energy that we have just had over the last 60 days, August, September, what the players have been doing and the amount of work they've put in has been incredible.
It's not normal, Matt. You've been in the league for a long time, but the amount of guys around, the guys who are around, the caliber of players you're talking about, and then, I mean, I know you guys can't take part in this, for example, because coaching can't be around, but guys individually have taken it upon themselves. And I think as recently as probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, you had, I think 12 or 13 guys in the gym every day. Tony had come in for a few days. Yep. Nick had come back. And so you had guys running fives. And so coaches can't be around on that. You guys can't coach them up. But they had taken ownership of that on their own individually to say, you know what, let's run 5-on-5. And super competitive, high-level basketball, iron sharpening iron. That's rare, though. You don't get that this time of year to that extent when you're talking about that many guys.
Yeah, you don't get that. And even when I was playing, just less than 10 years ago, that wasn't happening. And to have, in late August, you have guys playing, full court 5-on-5, competing, getting after it, putting their development work in, shots and skill work, and just getting better and pushing each other. And obviously you're getting better individually, but you're pushing the envelope on how can this team get better. And if they get better individually, the team's going to get better too.
Well, and Nick told the story with us about how literally the first game they ran, second play of the game, he threw a bad lob to MKG, and Tony got everybody out on the court and said, this stops now, and just tore him to shreds. But to hold him accountable, not to like make a scene of it or anything, but just be like, I know you're better than that. And this is why I'm here. That's not acceptable anymore. So don't do that, and let's go play again, right? But like even that example with Tony, I mean, that gets me fired up for the year.
It was one of those moments is we're sitting there watching and we're like, wow, like Tony is a coach on the floor.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy's 18 years in the league, NBA champion. I mean, NBA All-Star. I mean, how do you not respect a guy like that? But for the young players on this team, to have a guy like Tony Parker grab their attention, stop it, a play in the summer when you're just kind of playing pickup, you think, and it's like, no way. That's not how it's going to go down.
No wasted reps.
Yeah, we're not doing that this year. If you guys want to win, you want to create something special, this is how you have to play.
My favorite part about that is, though, one, that's not coincidence that it's Nick he's talking to, because he knows that sets the tone, because that's one of his best friends. And also, as you know, playing in the league as long as you did, there are guys that have done that before. Like, hey, I'm gonna give a speech, right? Or I'm gonna put my foot down. And some guys do it, and you're like, is this really about that, or is it about you, right? Or, hey, good thought, you're not the guy to be delivering this message. But you talk about a guy that's been in the league 17, now 18 years, 6-time All-Star, 4-time champion, Finals MVP. It's different from him. It's different from him, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's a great example, and I guess you can compare it to maybe like when our owner, Michael Jordan, comes in the gym, and he grabs a player, he addresses the team. It's a voice. Yeah, you straighten up, and you are locked in, eyes in there, and it's like, listen, you're taking this to heart, and it's a special type of person that can deliver those messages, but when they do it, it carries a lot of weight.
Let me ask you this about the player program stuff, and then we'll get into I want to talk about that illustrious high school basketball career. So I wonder if today, because I think this cuts either way, and I don't know if there is a right answer on this, but I think players come into the NBA now, even at 18 and 19, more aware of just everything, brands, their own brand, the market they're going into, just what exists, right? Like the NBA culture and how people consume media and all that stuff. I think guys come into the NBA way more aware of this today than even 5 years ago, like drastically so. But I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. So, like, for your world, what you live in every day, I think some guys walk in, they're super reasonable about what they need to do, and, hey, I want to grow my brand, but I also got to put in the work on the court and all that stuff. And I think there are other guys who come in maybe and think, yeah, I want to be a star, and it just doesn't work that way either. There's steps you got to follow. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is on that, but I feel like guys come into the NBA way more aware of what's going on around them than they ever have before.
Well, I think there's two parts to it. I think, first of all, they do. I think they come in and maybe they are a little more prepared because they are aware. But I think at a young age, most NBA players have been identified at 15 years old,
if not younger,
if not younger, and you're watching videos of them at a young age on YouTube, and this guy's going to be the next this, and you're making NBA comparisons for teenagers, but they have it in their head that I'm going to play in the league. But the other side of that is like there's probably 100,000 other high school players that think they're going to play in the league.
Yep.
And then you get to college and those numbers shrink. But the guys that do make it to 30 guaranteed a year, and then 10 or 15 other second-round picks that maybe come into the league at a young age. I mean, it's hard. And I think, you could probably relate to this. Like this day and age, like if you were going back to college and just living in the world of social media.
It's crazy.
And camera phones and everything you say or post or one bad decision can change everything. I mean, it's so delicate. It's like you're always kind of walking on eggshells on ice. And that's the stuff you want them to be aware of. Like, listen, you guys are somewhere.
Yeah.
There's going to be people that are going to try to get to you for a lot of reasons. And that has happened in the past, but now it's different because people have access to you.
Yeah.
Right? You just don't have to see them face to face. Like it's, through social media or whatever it might be. And so you got to kind of weed out and determine what voices should I listen to. And that's hard because everybody in some way has somewhat of a selfish intention because maybe they're working with you, right? And they want the best for you, but you're helping them also. So for me, it's like, how can I help them kind of zone out some of those voices and listen to who they should be listening to?
Let's talk about high school basketball for a second. So, do you consider yourself a Philly kid? I mean, you're essentially a Philly kid,
yeah,
right?
I do. I think because I went to high school there.
Yeah.
And I was born in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
I lived in Pittsburgh till I was 14 and then going into high school. But if I would have stayed in Pittsburgh, I would have played high school basketball for my grandfather.
Yeah.
So all my buddies that I played with growing up until 14 all went on to play for my grandfather, and I didn't. So that was a tough...
You did get to play for him for, what, a junior select team?
You did your homework.
I'm trying to be prepared, okay?
You're right. I did actually. I played in the Magic Johnson Round Ball Classic.
Okay.
It was the Adidas national game for high school players, and he was the coach. Actually.
How special was that?
It's cool. Yeah. The remember guy, Sonny Vaccaro, was in charge of that game.
Yeah.
And he was actually a Pittsburgh guy also, so my grandfather was the coach for that. But
yeah, Sonny was... For those who have never read, I talk about this book all the time, Boys Among Men.
Yeah.
Jonathan Abrams wrote this book, one of the most incredible reads. If you love the NBA, especially you love the NBA like turn of the century, mid-'90s into like mid-2000s when you were coming in, all the straight high school to NBA guys and the stories, and Sonny played a big part in that with all the recruiting camps he used to run.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was special. So you play Horsham, Pennsylvania, right?
Yes.
Technically is where your high school
30 minutes north of Center City, Philadelphia.
So it's like saying you played like in Concord or Mooresville or something like that, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. But it's like me. I live out in Union County. I'm a Charlotte guy. Like I don't like, no disrespect to like I live in Indian Trail. I love the town of Indian Trail, but it's like most people. You say, where are you from? You go somewhere else. You're like, I'm from Charlotte.
Absolutely.
So for you were from Philly,
and also
then.
like in a bigger city like Chicago and Philly, like the suburbs go out, but
Yeah,
there's
it's
still
huge.
Philly kids and Chicago kids. So anyway, so I didn't get a chance with my grandfather.
Yeah.
He ends up being the winningest basketball coach in boys high school basketball in Pennsylvania. And I still didn't play for him, so imagine he did that without me. But go to Philly then, which it was disappointing, you know, because that would have been great. But my dad got transferred, went with his work. We moved to Philadelphia, didn't know anybody. Came across another great high school coach at Harper Horsham, Ozzie Ostrowski. It was incredible. And that's kind of, I think, moving to Philly, I think exposure-wise, I think it helped me. It might have helped with those Player of the Year, Mr. Basketball Awards too, maybe being on both sides of the state, you know, the media writers.
And the level of competition had to be higher in Philly, right?
It's incredible, yeah. So, like, you know, when I was in high school, like, some of my rivals were a guy named John Salmons, neighboring township at Plymouth White Marsh, played in the NBA, you know, 12 years. Yeah. Jameer Nelson, you know, played forever, played with my brother.
Heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, in college. So the basketball was just a high level in Philly because you had New York and you had Baltimore and Jersey. And
that tri-state area is just so compact. It's like one big metro area,
it kind of is, yeah. So, like, you're playing AAU tournaments, so you don't have to go as far as, like, to Atlanta, you know, from Charlotte. And you're just going an hour away, and you're in Jersey and New York and, you know, D.C. And so it was big, and you're exposed to a lot of good players at a young age. And I think it helped me a lot. Who
was coming after you when you were coming out of high school? Obviously, you went to Notre Dame, but who else was coming hot?
I was pretty heavily recruited. You know, I took official visits. I went to Penn State. My parents went to Penn State. My wife went to Penn State. She was actually at Penn State at the time. I don't know if that has something to do with it or not, but no. I love Penn State. So I went there. I took another official visit to NC State.
Really?
Sean Miller, the Pittsburgh connection.
Yeah.
His dad was my AAU coach when I was younger, John Miller. And Archie Miller was actually a player at NC State, so knew them very well. So that connection helped. Also took it unofficial to Syracuse. Jim Boeheim was my coach on the USA team. Took an official visit to Wake Forest, who was one of my finals.
Skip would have been the coach at that time, right?
Dave Odom.
Coach Odom. Yeah, Coach O was was the head coach.
Who I liked a lot.
I mean, that guy is like, for anybody that's never hung out or talked to Dave Odom, you just want to hang out with that guy.
Cool guy.
He's just like energy in a bottle all the time.
Yeah, so I liked him a lot. They had one scholarship, and then I didn't go, and they ended up signing Josh Howard. Josh ended up being a great player.
It turned out to be a decent trade-off, too.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
And then Villanova was my next one, and then I also went to St. Joseph's.
Okay.
Where my brother ended up going, a local school. Phil Martelli, coach, loved him. Wrote me a handwritten letter every day for over 2 years.
Every day?
Yeah. I mean, I could never do that for my wife. You know, like how amazing is that when it comes to recruiting?
What were these letters like? Hey, just want to check in. Yeah,
checking to thank you. Saw you at this game, or here's a quote, like whatever it was. But I mean, you get these. Like, I'd come into homeroom in high school, and there would be like 100 envelopes at my desk in homeroom in high school, and I'm like, from Tennessee and USC and God knows where, you know.
But Phil always had a letter in there for you.
Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah, and then I think the other one I mentioned was Villanova.
Who was the coach of Nova at that time?
So Steve Lapis.
Yeah, and then Jay took over for him.
Yes, he did.
Yeah,
and but you know, St. Joe's, Villanova, right there in my backyard, so it was local. But you know, I went out to Notre Dame, and went to a Notre Dame Michigan football game. Took me down on the field. Catholic kid at Notre Dame, touchdown Jesus.
I mean, you can't.
It was I think that kind of wrapped it up. And
you know, I remember my grandfather was up in Jersey, you know, typical area. Just the biggest Catholic, Notre Dame fan you ever had in your life. And I mean, if that's your existence, like, that's hard. You can't turn that down, right? It just speaks to you in a different way. Where you're like, I got to be a part of this. There's something special to that.
It's special. There's a mystique about Notre Dame, walking that campus. Great school, obviously academically, but just fit. You know, it worked out, fortunately, with the coaching situation.
Well, yeah, because that's what's weird. So you get recruited by, John McLeod?
John McLeod, yeah. And then, former NBA coach.
And then he resigns.
Yep.
And then Matt Doherty takes over for a year.
Yes.
Does pretty well.
Yeah, my freshman year.
And then he goes and gets the Carolina job. And obviously that didn't go so well in the long run for him. Yeah. And then in comes some guy named Mike Bray, who I think's had some pretty good staying power. And you rode that. I mean, that's crazy, Matt. Like, I think a lot of kids definitely today, I don't know about when you were in school, definitely today would have said, you know what, I'm going to transfer.
Probably would have left.
Right? Yeah. After the first time, they said, I don't know if this is for me. Yeah. I think I want to go somewhere else.
You know, and I'll say the reason why was, I think a lot of kids pick a school largely based on the recruiting process from the coaches, right? You build a relationship, happens over time. You know, mom likes the coach, gets to know the assistant coaches, right? So you're in. But I got to be honest, Notre Dame recruited me. Like, I went to Notre Dame because of Notre Dame, you know? And that's what I think really held me there. And then we had a great group of guys. And I could tell, like, we were kind of changing the culture. And we had some potential to do some good things. And that sophomore year, freshman year, Doherty took us to the
Was you NIT that year, right?
NIT, yeah. But won 20 games, so had a successful year, comparable to what it was before. And we lost in the finals to Wake Forest. And then that second year, Bray came in, and we just kind of took off, won the Big East, and ended up losing in the second round to Ole Miss that year.
The next year, you went to the second round, too.
And then the next year,
you went to the Sweet 16.
Lost to Duke.
Yeah.
Up 7 points, 4 minutes to go against Duke. And this one they had Jay Will, Boozer, Dunleavy, Dante Jones. So I still get a little.
That's a little sticky around here.
Yeah.
Well, and so the Big East too at that time. It was kind of the heyday of what a lot of people fondly remember the Big East, smaller Big East at that time, but elite powers. You guys were starting to come on. Providence was kind of up and down, but they had some good teams some years. Yeah. Georgetown was normally pretty good. BC was really good at that time. BC, they won the league a couple times, I think, in the regular season.
They were good. Yeah,
and then you're talking about Cuse, which was Cuse. I mean, they were as good as they were the cream of the crop in the Big East. So, Johnny's would be good once in a blue moon.
UConn was really good.
Yeah, UConn was really good. Yeah. So, that was kind of the heyday of the Big East back then.
It was before it kind of changed. But it was a great experience. I think for me playing at Madison Square Garden for the Big East tournament was like it's the best.
How electric was that place? Compare that to playing at MSG in an NBA game. What's it like? Because they're different, but what's the...
Yeah, it's different, but similar, right? I mean, because you still get that feeling of, I'm in New York City. Like, you're taking the bus to the game, and there's people and buildings and cars everywhere.
Yeah.
So you get that feel like you're in the city, you know? And then you take the old elevator up, and it stinks, and you're just like, man, like, we're here in the Garden, you know? And then you hear the organ, and just, I don't know, everything about it is just like nothing else.
And I will give MSG in that city credit. And even now with the new Big East, I've actually been surprised at how well they've kind of held it together. But that city doesn't stop for anything.
No.
Because everybody that's ever been in New York, I mean, you could, drop $1 million in the streets and people are just going to keep on doing what they're doing, right? Like they're on,
sure.
like everybody's on a mission in that city. There's just too much going on. But that city loved the Big East tournament.
They loved it, man.
And they don't care about college sports in that city for anything. But something about that tournament, that time of year, it was like, no, this is a big deal in this building, in this city. And you felt that. You felt it when you saw those games.
And I think it was because, like, you just think of tradition. You think all the schools and all the alumni from those schools, everybody's okay with going to New York. Like, hey, let's go to New York for the Big East tournament.
Sure.
And we're going to drink beer all day and just get loud and crazy. And by the time you play in the 7 o'clock or like the 9 o'clock game, I mean, people
that crowd's crazy.
Oh, I mean, imagine being, college football game at 9 p.m. I mean, it's incredible. So that energy, that juice was just like, never forget it.
What do you remember about 2003, that Syracuse team that went on? I think they were a 3 seed at the NCAA tournament.
Man.
They went on to win it, obviously. Carmelo was amazing in the tournament and in the championship game as a freshman. But you guys played them probably as tight as anybody all year long. You lost by, I think, 6 points combined in the 2 games, there and at home. So what do you remember about those matchups? What do you remember about Melo as a freshman? Like, were you thinking, okay, this is going to be a transcendent star in the NBA?
I remember those clearly because, that was my senior year. So it was kind of, captain, ownership, like, this is it, baby. We're gonna do it this year. And we started off great. We beat 3 top 10 teams in a week to start the season. It was like Marquette, Dwayne Wade, Texas, and Maryland in 1 week. I don't know if that's ever happened again. But that was incredible. But we play Syracuse, and I remember the first time we're playing them. And then, like you said, they went on to have this magical run. But they obviously had a little guy from PA, Jerry McNamara, to shoot
he was
the
so
heck
good.
out of it. Tough little white dude, And then Carmelo. So I remember
Hakeem Warwick was pretty good on those
and
teams.
Hakeem was there too, obviously. Philly guy. So Hakeem. But I'm guarding Melo for the first time. And he scores like 3 times in a row. And I'm like thinking, like, who is this guy? because like he's a freshman. Like I knew I heard about him, but he wasn't mellow yet, And he was big and he was strong and he was bodying me up and jabbing me and hitting jumpers. And I'm like, who is this guy? Like I can't stop him.
Yeah.
So I look at my buddy Dan Miller, and Dan was from Jersey. He went to Maryland for 3 years, transferred to Notre Dame, had a great senior season. And I was like, dude, who is this guy? Like, I can't stop him. He's like, let me guard him. I was like, fine.
Go right ahead.
So we switch off. Same thing. Melo scores like 3 times in a row again. He's like, I can't stop him either.
Take him back.
Who is this guy? So he was incredible. But you looked at him, you're like, he's different. He's special. And then you see what they did. They went on to win that national championship. So.
Yeah. Gosh, college basketball was... I wouldn't say that was the last time it was really, really fun, but that's about close to the last time to me college basketball was because you had the staying power. I know we don't need to get into the whole one-and-done situation, but it'll probably never get back to that. And I hate to say that because I think we all enjoy – if you love the NBA, you probably enjoy college basketball to some extent too.
Right.
But, man, the brands and the teams and the staying power.
You didn't have that. Like, Kentucky wasn't a Kentucky to go one and done.
Yeah.
And Duke, obviously not. Like, we're playing that Duke team, and all those great players played in the NBA, but they were 3, juniors and seniors, So,
God, those Maryland teams at that time, too, were so good in the early 2000s.
Exactly. So you're right. That's a great point. I never thought about that, but it was different then.
Yeah. We can say college basketball really – the heyday ended when Matt Carroll graduated. We'll just say that, right? I think that's true.
2003, it went downhill.
So last thing on your prep career. So you played. You talked about it, but you played on the under-18 FIBA World Championship team. What was that like? Just because Dwayne Bacon's doing it now, and he's talking about like, man, the fact that I'll be able to hang my jersey one day and it'll say Bacon and USA, like that's got to just feel so great to have that jersey and have that forever.
Yeah. And I've done that. I remember I think my mom took the jersey and got a frame one time. But like looking at it, I was like, wow, like I'm on. This is the USA team, and they pick kids from all over the country. Yep. And a lot of the guys that were on my team went to play in the NBA and had some great coaches.
Mike Miller was on that team.
Mike Miller, and we just Nick Collison, Steve Blake. I mean, we had good. Some really good players. But I look back and I'm like, you maybe didn't realize it at the time, but you're playing for your country. And you see why that's a big deal. You're representing something a lot bigger than yourself, or any team that I played on before. And, we won. I played on it twice. So my junior year, we qualified, and we won the North and South America championship. And then we went on to the World Games, and we actually lost in the finals to a team from Spain. And the Spanish team had, like, the Gasols, Carlos Navarro. Like, they had some dudes that could just play. And they beat us, but, we took home a silver medal. But it was just an incredible experience. Well,
I bet you look back in hindsight, like when the U.S. started to struggle in the Olympics, and you're probably thinking, oh, yeah, I saw that a few years ago. I was starting to catch on that the rest of the world is, like, elevating its game. Like, we're not leaps and bounds necessarily better than everybody else anymore.
But I think it opened my eyes. Like, we're playing against, like, Greece, but we played Egypt and China, and you're just like...
It's everywhere.
Yeah. I think, being naive as a teenager, like, these guys play basketball? Mm-hmm. You don't really know, right? You just think, like, this is our sport, but it was incredible and just opened my eyes that, like, this is really a global game.
You're undrafted. You latched onto the Knicks that first summer out of college. Did you think you might get drafted? Like, did you have an agent at that time?
Oh, yeah. I had an agent. My agent was Dan Fagan, who actually passed away.
Yeah.
Within this year, very sad. But he was great. But I hired Dan, and he gave me great direction and advice. And I remember, obviously, thinking I was probably going to get drafted in the early second round. If I was lucky, late first, and if not, mid to late second. And we had teams, I'm not going to name any teams, but teams said, hey, if you're on the board, we're going to take you. So, I wasn't at the draft in New York City, but I was sitting there. It was one of the hardest probably nights of my life at that time. Because
were you at home with your family?
Yeah, I was just home with my family and just thinking, well, it's going to be like, the dream come true. Even though I wasn't going to be a lottery pick, I knew, like, it's going to happen, and really worked hard, after having a great senior season at Notre Dame and then doing what most guys do, going down to IMG in Florida and training for 3 months and finishing school early and all this stuff. So I was ready. And then those 60 names get called and you're not one of them. And it's like, man, like, wow. Is it going to happen? You know? And I'll never forget just a funny moment from that, though. As disappointed as I was, I remember my sister was 10 years younger. And she said, well, I guess it's time to go get a laptop and get a real job, big bro. Yeah. I didn't think it was very funny at the time, but looking back, I appreciate it. But, yeah.
So that had to be – when did you get a call? When did teams start reaching out to you like, hey, we're going to give you maybe a summer league invite, or hey, we're going to bring you in for training camp? When did those calls start to come in?
So basically my agent called me, obviously right after the draft, and said, so I've got some opportunities for summer league. We'll talk about it tomorrow. And then we talked about it and said, hey, I think New York really wants you. You had a good draft work out there, and they're interested. And the only hesitation was they had 17 guaranteed contracts on their roster. So it's kind of like, does this make sense? Like, how am I going to make this team? And as a player, you're like, I'm going to make this team. But you're like, how am I going to – they're not going to cut this guaranteed money in contracts. But, hey, I took his advice, went to summer league, and played well in summer league, got an invite to then training camp, and went up to training camp. And the assistant coach was a guy named Mike Malone, who's in Denver.
Yep.
And he was great. Every day we were first one in the gym, just grinding, working, shooting hundreds of shots. And he was really good for me. And the good thing was my agent had the foresight that Allen Houston was the starting two guard, but he was hurt. So he wasn't going to play in training camp in the preseason. So it opened up an opportunity. So I started every game in the preseason.
Wow.
And played good minutes and back in the Garden. So that was pretty cool. Family could come up and watch some games there. Yeah. And was there until the last day of preseason, day before the season.
And you were the last cut, right?
Last cut, yeah. And that was tough, And
did you think maybe you had done enough to be on the right side of the bubble?
Because I think at that time being a little naive was a good thing. Thinking that like if I didn't break all the numbers down, they're not going to do this. Or really understand the business of it helped me because I was so
focused
of like I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to find a way to make them cut two guys because they can't let me go. And that was kind of the mentality, and that's what my agent told me, and it worked. But it was like, looking back, it's hard. He knew I was going to go through some adversity, but you're going to get through it or not. So it was tough. So got cut, and then a couple days later, decided to go out to Long Beach, California, try out for some, I don't know, it was like an ABA, CBA team, whatever was going on there at the time. Was there for 2 days, and they got a call from Portland. And my agent called me and said, hey, I got an opportunity. And he said, the Trailblazers want to sign you. And my dad told me, like about a year later, he goes, hey, Dan called me and said, I got good news and bad news. He said, the good news is I got an opportunity for Matt in Portland with the Trailblazers. He goes, the bad news is it's with the Trailblazers.
Oh, no.
Who are known as the Jailblazers.
Yeah.
So, first thing.
But he didn't tell you that.
No, he didn't tell me that. My old man said, he'll be fine. He'll be all right. So, I get out there.
You were there until, from November basically till January, right?
Yes.
And then they released
the day before your contract becomes guaranteed for the rest of the season.
Matty.
So, tough deal. Yeah. But what's interesting, I got there because Derek Anderson was the two guard and was actually injured, so that's why they brought me up. And Derek Anderson ended up being a teammate of mine in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And so I get to Portland, and it's, Rasheed Wallace, Damon Stoudemire, Zach Randolph. And what was so great about it, like I walk in there, and I'm like, man, like this is here. Mo Cheeks is the coach, and I'm looking around. These dudes are like, oh, who's the Rook? Who's the new guy, And Rasheed Wallace says, hey, he said, Rook, where'd you go to school? I said, I went to Notre Dame. And he goes, I love Notre Dame. And I was like, all right. He's like, I hate their basketball team, but I love their football team. Big Notre Dame fan.
Jeez.
Like, Rasheed Wallace, like, what? And so he's like, hey, get in the middle of the circle and sing your fight song to us. Because he knew it. And I was like, so I'm like turning red. It's like a tomato, like embarrassed. He's like, no, I'm serious. And I was like, all right. Cheer for these dudes were laughing, But that was how I met the team. And those guys were great, though, man. It was just a great experience. Rasheed took care of me, take me out to eat, do some things. But Zach Randolph was great. He was probably younger than me at the time. But anyway, but it ended up being a good experience. But getting cut again was hard.
That year for you, I just think, I had to have been so trying, and yet every time you push through, so you get cut by Portland. You then go play in you go back to the other side of the country, quite literally as far as you can almost go in this country. Yeah. You go to Roanoke. You're playing in the NBDL at that time. You end up going on a tear. Team played amazing. You're scoring 20-some-odd points a game. You're shooting the lights out. your most valuable player in the league,
Right.
and then you latch on with the Spurs for the last few games of the year. As you said, that's where you meet James Borrego for the first time. That was his first season with the team, off a championship. And, yeah, after that, some team named the Charlotte Bobcats, they decide to bring you in on their expansion team. But that whole year, Matty, like, I don't know how many guys would have just packed it in and said, you know what, maybe this thing isn't for me. Like the first time maybe after the Knicks, you go undrafted, okay, I'm going to prove people wrong. You go with the Knicks, I thought I had a great summer league, training camp, you get cut. Now Portland's going to bring me in, I'm not good enough because now you got to guarantee my contract, you get released again. You go to the D-League, I play great, but then you go to the Spurs, it's only a few days and they don't bring you back either. So it's like, how many of those opportunities would the average person have said, you know what, it's been a great run. I had a great college career. Maybe I do something else in basketball, but maybe being a pro isn't cut out for me. But you never – I'm sure you thought about that at times, but you always found a way to push through.
Yeah, I think I definitely had those moments, especially when you're riding the bus, from sun to – I mean, it's, 10 o'clock at night in Alabama and you're riding back overnight watching the sun rise on a bus back to Roanoke, Virginia. So I had some moments where I'm like, Is this?
This is not what I envisioned.
I didn't envision myself doing this, right? So, what it taught me though, when people say, "Well, how did you do it?" Right? And I look back, and all I can really take from it, and I try to tell a lot of the young guys here that the rookies and our G League guys, and it's going to be a hard run for them, But one thing, there's a lot of different paths to get to the NBA. No one's path is the same. No one's journey is the same. But you got to be resilient. You got to persevere, and I think. What it taught me was like if you want something bad enough and you were that passionate about it inside, like really truly believe it with your heart, soul, whatever you want to call it, it can happen. And it enables you to keep pushing even when like all the signs are saying, dude, what are you doing? Like go do something else. I mean, you can, and I think it just showed me how bad I wanted to play in the NBA because I could have went overseas.
Yeah, you could have done
whatever
different things. Yeah.
Just kept grinding, kept pushing. I think when I got a little taste of it, going back and forth from Portland, San Antonio, it showed me like I can play in this league, and then it's about opportunity, right? And you got to persevere through it, right? But there's a lot of guys who are good enough, right, that were just like me or whatever, probably even better, but just said I'm not willing to grind like this, And that's for a lot of guys in life, right? I mean, how many CEOs and entrepreneurs that just are this far away from just hey, man, it's not working, but they hang in for another week and it happens.
Got to keep knocking on the door, and you might not have gotten an answer yet, but maybe it's the next knock where somebody says, oh, I didn't hear you, right? Come on in.
Or someone else gave up and now you get your chance, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
and I think just one of the cool parts, too, is you're one of the one of the first success stories of the D-League, to say, hey, here's a guy that cut his teeth in the D-League, played at a high level, made a name for himself, and then went on to have a really good career in the NBA. And so, you're one of the early guys in the league, and people say, what is this developmental league? And, can this turn into anything? And now then it became the NBA DL after that. Now it's the G League. And so, you were one of the first. You were one of the you're pioneer, Matty.
Pioneer for it, We'll take that.
Yeah.
We'll run with that.
You get to Charlotte. I lived that experience growing up here of going from the Hornets to not having a team, which was crushing, and then getting the Bobcats. And it was just kind of an interesting time to be in the city. So from a player's perspective, what were you thinking when you find out this expansion team, the Charlotte Bobcats, they wanted you, you're going to be a part of the inaugural team. The city loves basketball, but it kind of ended in a weird way, and now basketball's being brought back. Yeah. What was that like for you?
Well, one, I didn't really know the history of the Hornets here, right? Like, I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I had some Hornets gear when I was younger and had appreciation because they had cool colors and they were new. But I didn't know, how far it went with everybody of like, man, like our team was taken from us. And now a team came back, and it's not really our team, But, like, for me, it was like I was in the NBA. I didn't care what city or what team I was on. I was just happy to be in the league, And the one thing I held on to my exit interview after San Antonio rookie year with Greg Popovich was, he said, Matty, because you're a San Antonio guy. Like you can play here. You're our kind of guy, right? So it felt good. But he said, I got to tell you this: in order to make a career in this league, you have to play early on. And he said, looking at our roster, there are They won the World Championship the year before I was here, the year after I left. He goes, you're our 5th, 6th wing here. There's no minutes. Unless 3 guys get hurt, it's probably going to be hard to play. And he goes, I'm just being honest because I want you to have a career, but you got to play early on. So that's when I decided not to play at the Spurs in the summer league. I went and played Golden State and bounced around and whatever. But I held on to that, and what I thought when I got here to Charlotte, being a new team, being an expansion team, I could tell there was opportunity. And that's why I approached it. Like, if I put the work in and I show that I'm ready, like, I will get a chance here, you know? If we're not going to the World Championship, that might be a good thing for me because I might get an opportunity here, and that's kind of how I approached it.
Early on, there was excitement around the team. You guys played at the Charlotte Coliseum. There was a newness to it again. It was not quite the same as obviously as it was with the Hornets, but you guys were selling out games. There were a lot of people early on who were like, "Oh, the NBA's back. I want to go check this out."
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So there was some excitement early on, but as the year went on, I think the city became aware of like, okay, this is definitely an expansion team.
Right.
There are some good players on this team. Maybe the whole team is not what we were used to when the team left a few years ago. Obviously, some of the attendance started to wane. But did you sense that? Like, could you ever sense the resentment maybe from some segments of the fan base who were like, this isn't to your point, this isn't my team. My team plays in New Orleans now. Yeah. There were just some people who were, for whatever reason, were so, I guess they had this wall built up against Bobcats,
maybe
right?
Unfairly, right. Yeah, I just feel
and I think it was unfairly.
Yeah,
it was
because
unfair.
like what did the Bobcats do? I mean, they brought basketball back and whatever, but I think those people, like, you didn't really hear them. You know, it wasn't like it was like loud and like you're feeling like, hey, some people that love the original Hornets don't like the Bobcats. It was like you didn't really pay attention to it, you know? And like anything, like winning cures everything, right?
Yeah.
So then like eventually when the Bobcats made the playoffs, like it brought some momentum back. But like if you look at like the early Hornets, like they weren't any better than the Bobcats, you know, early on. You know, as far as wins or losses, I mean,
that's the truth.
But they were perceived like.
In fact, they're actually worse in some ways. You guys early on, you want to think what?
We were in the 30s.
26, I think, the first year, and then it was 33, and then I think 32.
Right, which is not. I mean, last year wasn't much. You know, so like you think if you look at over time, record-wise, it wasn't as bad. I think as people kind of make it sound.
Yeah.
You know, we obviously had the 1 year, but that year is a little bit unfair just because the lockout. And we were playing with 6 guys some nights or whatever. But no, I don't think we ever really felt it, and I think the thing that was difficult, though, was like it was just a constant revolving door. Now, I know an expansion team goes through that, right, and you're trying things out. But it wasn't even just like the team. It was, you know, it was management at times. It was the business side. It was basketball ops. It was players. It was coaches. I mean, I played for 5 coaches in 7 seasons.
That's crazy.
That's hard. It's hard for anybody, right? There's just no stability, which makes everybody's job more difficult. So you never felt comfortable. You know,
which I think does ultimately, to tie into that point of why I think some of this stuff was unfair about some of the criticism lobbed towards you guys as players and the Bobcats overall, just as an entity. A guy like Gerald Wallace to do what he did, to be this, because he was the stabilizer, right? Like we can call him G-Force, we can call him Crash, all the nicknames that are well deserved. That guy was the stabilizer for this team for the better portion of a decade, in a way where so many other things came and went, and the wins and losses maybe weren't what you wanted, but, man, that guy poured his heart and soul onto the court every night and did it regardless, whoever was coaching or whoever was around him.
No, he did.
I don't know if he'll ever really, truly get enough credit for
maybe because of that.
Yeah.
But, like, he was special. You know, he was just a different type of athlete, and he played so hard. I love playing with him. You know, he just gave his heart and soul. He sacrificed his body. And I'd say the one thing, you know, having a group of players that was constantly changing in a team with new jerseys coming in the locker room, that guys played hard because it was an opportunity for most guys. And you come here, and whether it was like a Brevin Knight who's trying to revitalize his career towards
Brevin had some good run here.
Yeah, Brevin was a great player, great vet, great mentor for me. Loved playing with him. But you had a mix of those, you know, a mix of young players. Then you had a mix of guys, you know, from like the minor leagues, like me trying to come in there. So it was just kind of this melting pot of like dudes just trying to play in the NBA, you know. And so it was good at times, but it made for a lot of competitiveness through practice. Didn't result to a ton of wins, but I think at the end of the day, the team played hard and can hang their hat on just being competitive in their own right, you know.
And so you went to Dallas for a few years. You come back. You came back off the playoff run, the one playoff run this team had when Steven was here, and Raja Bell was on that team.
Yeah.
Boris Diaw was on that team. And you guys, I think, came back and won, 34 the next year?
Right.
Didn't go out the way you wanted. You get a coaching change midway through the year. Paul Silas takes over. It's just things were starting to deteriorate a little bit inside the locker room. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously, as you said, there's the lockout in 2010-11, 7-59. But much like you played with Gerald Wallace, you played with this youngster named Kemba Walker at that time, and Bismack Biyombo. They came in as the two lottery picks. Right. But, man, what a trying year. But what do you remember about Kemba? Did anything did anything stand out where you're like, you know what, this might – I don't know if you ever told him this or you just thought this, like, everything's going to be okay. Yeah. It might not seem like it right now, but everything's going to be okay with this kid and this team and all that.
I think the one thing I told Kemba, and this is probably what I remember most about that year with him, was it was hard on everybody, right, to go through a season like that. We just didn't have the talent to win, to be honest with you. And then we had a couple players that had some talent that didn't play, because of injuries or maybe they just didn't want to play or whatever was going on at the time. But Kemba, I respected the fact, and I told him this, of just his toughness. He is a true competitor. And even when he was banged up and could have been like, I'm going to sit out this game because I know we're not going to win. And that's kind of was the feeling that year. Like, we're not going to win tonight, so we're going to go out and lose, and the game hasn't started yet, But Kemba played every single night, even when he was injured. And he was feeling it, and he was frustrated. And we were all frustrated. And he's coming off a national championship, so he's not used to this, So it's different. He was at a different stage than I was at the end, But I just remember him and his toughness, always wanting to compete no matter what the circumstance was. And I think that's why he's been so successful, because he has that. It's who he is,
Yeah, I think he had mentioned this. He was on J.J. Redick's podcast over the summer, and I think he had mentioned this, because J.J. talked about how guys are – and I think this is a really interesting designation. Like, guys are winners even though sometimes we label them as not. So, like, Chris Paul, I think, has been hit with a long time as, like, career loser. But it's not necessarily fair because everywhere he's ever gone, he's performed at a high level. They've won a bunch.
Totally. Haven't
always done in the postseason. Some of that's not his fault, but you just attach that to him. And they're talking about Kemba that way. Like, Kemba is the ultimate competitor winner everywhere he's been. And to go from 7 wins to 48 wins, I just don't know how many guys can do it. There's not a lot of precedent for that. And to do it when not only the team elevates, but you go from a guy where people are questioning whether you're a starting caliber point guard. Yeah. And people were questioning that, Matt. Like 3-4 years ago, people questioned, like, how good is Kemba Walker? And now he's one of the best at his position in the NBA. There's just not a lot of precedent for that kind of turnaround in this league.
There's not. And I think it's a testament to his will to want to get better and maybe even prove people wrong. I think being a smaller guy, I think he always plays with the chip on his shoulder, whether he shows it or not. But he just competes. And even just like watch him today, now like, being on the floor every day with him and just watching how he competes in drills and pickup and whatever, like he's a quiet leader, and he doesn't always do it with his voice, but man, he competes every day, no matter what, sprints, shooting drills, and he does it with a smile on his face. So he's different than some leaders, but like when you're around, the more you're around him, the more you appreciate, his style.
All right, we'll wrap with this because we've been keeping you long enough. So we had this discussion in the office the other day, more of a debate actually. People can go to Hornets30.com. They can vote for our all-time Hornets team. And so we were trying to say top 10. Regardless of position, you're just saying top 10 all-time players in Hornets, Bobcats, and Hornets history. And I've got 9 guys that I claim are non-negotiable right off the bat. Yeah. And so then it gets to a group of 5 or 6 you'd say is up for one last spot. Okay, so you ready for my 10?
Yeah, go for it.
And then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
So in no uncertain order, these guys are non-negotiables. Alonzo, Larry, Muggsy, Dell, Anthony Mason, Glenn Rice, Emeka Okafor, Gerald Wallace, Kemba Walker. I'm at 9 right there, and I don't even flinch. Those guys all deserve to be on that top 10 list. So now it gets into who gets to be the 10th. And you know who I'm going to go with? Because I don't think this guy gets enough attention. David Wesley.
Shooter.
Had a great long run. He bridged from those Mason and Rice teams with Dell, those high firepower offenses, to that next generation when it was Barron, Eldon, P.J. Brown, Jamal Mashburn. He kind of bridged that gap. and he performed at a high level for a long time. He could shoot the heck out of the ball, too. He doesn't get enough credit for that.
Yeah.
So David Wesley makes my top 10, but that's my 10.
I like it. I think for me, a lot of it, I think, depends on, like, how long did they play here? Now, I think that should carry some weight for some guys. Like,
I
if
agree.
someone's here for a year, it's like...
That's why I think Emeka and Gerald are locks.
Absolutely.
And Emeka's the all-time leading rebounder in team history.
Right. No question there. I mean, it's like the Wizards. Like, are the Wizards going to say Michael Jordan was, one of their all-time great? I mean,
they'll probably try to claim it. Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
Like,
they'll
who
try
knows,
to claim
right?
it.
Like,
yeah.
But even like when you go down to Miami, like there's a jersey of Michael Jordan hanging in the rafters, right?
Yep.
But everybody should probably do that for MJ. But
But it's like Baron Davis. Baron was really explosive, but he was still super raw here.
Yeah.
His best years came when he was down in New Orleans when the team moved.
True. But
So-
I think a lot of people, it depends on like when you watched. Like when were you a fan? When did you see these players? And some fans aren't historians, right? So it's kind of hard to decide like, do I remember Baron Davis here when he was in Golden State?
Well, you can make an argument for like Raymond Felton, actually.
Right.
And Ray had a really solid career here for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he never materialized into being like Chris Paul, his contemporary in that draft class, but that's no knock on Ray.
Right.
Like Ray had and he still has a really long career. You can make an argument. I don't know if I would put him in my top 10, but I'd say he's definitely in like the 15 to 20 range.
Yeah.
And that top 20, like it's a Eddie Jones, for example.
Eddie Jones, too.
Like where does Eddie Jones fit into that? Because
know.
he was a multi-time All-Star here,
Yeah.
multi-time defensive selection too in the
Right.
NBA.
Yeah.
He started an All-Star game. That's
Yeah.
really hard to do.
Yeah.
And he did it. So I don't put Eddie Jones in my top 10.
I haven't done one yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun exercise. You
Yeah,
should like
I wanna
seriously
do it.
put pen to
I'm going to have
paper.
to put myself in there just because I'm on the list, but
Well, yeah, and I mean,
just 'cause,
all,
probably,
yeah, all
but-
the shooting numbers are up there. So
yeah, so that's tough. What about current players? I mean, I know you've gone a lot of like older former guys, but like how about on this current team? So obviously Kemba. Okay.
I'll give you one, and I think he's on the fringe of it now. I think if he plays for a couple more years, the way he has over the last 4, I think he's going to be in this conversation. That's Marvin Williams.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking too. Because I think shooting wise,
It's unbelievable.
If he plays, 3 more years
Yep.
at his numbers, I mean, yeah, you got to put him.
He's done it for 4 years now. So, yeah, if you talk about 2-3 years, now you're talking 6-7 years. I think people also lose sight of, like, when you talk about a 4 to 5 year run in a single city performing at a pretty high level, it's a long time in the NBA. It's a long time. There are guys that can do it for a year here or a year there.
Right.
Maybe did it 2. You start talking 3, 4, 5 years consistently at a high level, which is, again, why Kemba's incredible right now. That's so hard to do.
Yeah.
So hard to do.
So if I rattled off a couple, it'd be Kemba, number 1. And then I'd go with your 2, Gerald Wallace and Emeka Okafor. Del Curry.
Del for sure.
Muggsy.
Yep.
Lonzo Mourning. Larry Johnson. So there's my 7 that are like, boom, right there.
Anthony Mason, to me, I'm a big Mace fan because I think...
Yeah, I think of him on the Knicks, though. Like,
okay, no, that's
I
fair.
don't know why. Like, when I think back to certain players,
fair.
like, when do you remember them? And I know he did well here, but, like, I don't have a recollection of a kid watching him in Charlotte. You know what I mean?
No, that's fair. I just think of him as the triumvirate with Mason. It was Mason, Rice, and Dell. Like, those 3...
Yeah, well, Glenn Rice, too. I got to do
Yeah, Glenn Rice, awesome. But that's the same thing. I think
So I got 8 then. I got 8 for sure.
But Glenn's whole thing was, okay, All-Star Game MVP, 3 straight years where he was an All-Star, only player in team history to do that. And he performed at such a high level. I think he finished 2nd in scoring one season during that run in the entire NBA. He was explosive. Kemba can score.
Yeah.
Glenn Rice is the most explosive scorer this team has ever
That
had.
can just go like boom, boom.
Yeah,
boom,
he could drop 50 on any given night.
buddy, yeah.
And so, but Glenn did it at 3 years, but the 3-year level he had was elite in the NBA.
Right.
Best at his position in the
not
NBA.
just in the
type of good.
organization. You're talking about, not
So that
franchise.
counts to me.
I agree. That makes sense. Yeah, you're talking league-wide. This is...
And Muggsy's staying power, like Muggsy, to have him be, he's first in assists, he is first in steals. I think Kemba's going to break his steals record when it's all said and done. But you're talking about minutes played, games started, the longevity.
Time, to be productive, too, right?
And the height matters.
Yeah.
To be the shortest player in NBA history.
How do you not love Muggsy? I mean, that's incredible, right? Like, how can you be his height? I mean...
And he was one of the best defensive players at his position at that height. Like, it defies logic.
I know.
Because he was so good at stealing the ball.
Right.
And his rhythm, I think Steve Martin used to talk about this. Like, he had timed the ball to when it would go from your hand. After a couple dribbles, I think it would take like 2. He would time it from when the ball went from your hand to the floor, and he'd get the cadence down. And he would just take it from you.
Just get it. Time
like
it
that's
up.
hard to do.
That's really hard to do.
Yeah.
But I get it because like now when I play pickup hoops, like we'll play here like with the staff sometimes. And I'm like the big guy.
Yeah.
You know, and like in the NBA,
Matt played the center.
Yeah, I'm like
You're
playing
5.
center. I'm setting screens and popping, and I'm like, I'm not used to that. I should be come screen for me. What are you doing? But all these little guards now, you're like on our coaching staff, they get down so low, and I'm like, I can't get by these guys.
Yeah.
They're so low. But that's what Muggsy did.
It's the game now, man.
Oh.
That's the game. Maddie, it's good to see you. I don't get to see you as much during the course of the week right now because you're downstairs, you're doing your thing, and I'm so happy for you.
Thanks.
I'm so excited for the season to get started, and we're days away. We'll take the air in Chapel Hill. We'll do a preseason game. What do you think?
Excited, man. Can't wait, Kroegs.
All right, that's my broadcast partner, Matt Carroll, 10-year vet in the NBA, former Bobcat, and he is going to be with me on Friday. We got our first broadcast as we'll get ready to take on the Celtics in our preseason opener at the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill. Training camp's going to be going on all week up on the campus of UNC, so it's going to be a lot of fun to see this team take shape, and we'll get our first look coming up in a few days, so you can check us out. Whether you're listening locally in Charlotte on WFNZ, maybe you'll listen on the Hornets mobile app. You can stream the radio broadcast anywhere on that Hornets app. So tune us in. We'll have some fun on Friday night. You can catch us on the podcast anywhere podcasts are available: Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify. You find us, we'll be there. Or you could find us on Apple Podcasts. Of course, you could search Courtside Seats. You could search my name, Kroeger. And then once you find us, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, rate us up if you don't mind. Or on our official YouTube channel for the Hornets, same thing. Search for Courtside Seats. You could search Charlotte Hornets. Subscribe. You'll get pushed all of our great video content, especially throughout the week at training camp on our YouTube channel, and you can find us there. We'll be back next week, another edition right here of Courtside Seats.